I just turned 30 last week, and it got me thinking, what goals have I accomplished for myself that I thought I would for sure hit by age 30? What about goals that I haven't accomplished? And while I'll spare you the personal details of all of the shit that comes to mind when you hit a major milestone like 30, I knew that there was one major important goal that my husband and I are crushing. We have a solid retirement bucket. We are on track to retire at the age we want to and continue the lifestyle that we are currently living. So, with that being said, how much money should you have by the time you turn 30? This is Rich Girl's Guide, where we demystify the world of personal finance to help you create a financially successful and fulfilling life. I'm your host, Kirby, and I worked in wealth management for over 6 years before leaving the office to focus on my business and my family. Spoiler alert, I am not going to be giving you a hard and fast number that you need to have saved by the time you turn 30. I know, sorry to disappoint. But assigning an arbitrary number that has nothing to do with your personal financial history is honestly going to do more harm than good in most cases. Instead, we're going to discuss the 5 major components that make up your total financial picture and how you can measure your financial success at 30 or any age for that matter. By the end of this episode, you'll be able to assign yourself a financial score and map out how to increase that score year over year. I will also be revealing my personal financial score at the end of this episode, so if you are a nosy little biatch like me, stick around to the end to find that out. Now, the 5 components we are going to discuss and score are emergency fund savings, retirement savings, short-term savings and investments, real assets, and debt. Now, don't worry, I'm going to break down each category so that you know exactly what they mean, how to score yourself, and how to gauge your progress over time. Now, before I break down the 5 categories, let's look at a little graph here, shall we? This graph shows the median and the average net worth, your entire financial picture for different age categories ranging from under age 35 to 75 plus. Now, the median net worth for those under age 35 is $39,000, while the average net worth is nearly 5 times that amount, $183,500. Now, the point of showing you this is not to freak you out. Rather, I want you to see that as you get older, your net worth grows slowly as well, both the median and the average over time. By the time Americans reach age 75 plus, they have a median net worth of $335,600, while the average net worth is $1,624,100. Now, I'm not going to get into the differences between medium and average income right now. If you want an episode on the differences and what they mean for income disparity in America, I would be more than happy to do a deep dive. Just let me know. But I did want to point out the significant increase in net worth from under 30 to over 75 in both the median and the average category, just to give you a bit of an idea of where the rest of America is at. Okay, before we dive into the rest of today's episode, I have to ask you a question. Could you use an extra $50 in your bank account? I use Ally Bank to hold my emergency fund and other short-term savings because I get an annual interest rate of 4.2% on my savings. And if you open an Ally Bank account using my promo code, which is linked below, not only will you receive the 4.2% interest on your savings, but you will also get a free $50 sign-up bonus. Now, you know I am all about transparency on this show, so if you do open an account using my promo code, I will receive a small kickback. Now, I would not be promoting this if I did not use and love this bank. I can separate out my money into buckets for specific occasions and purposes, like vacations or children's savings. I can create goals for these buckets, and best of all, I get to log in at the beginning of the month and see my monthly interest deposit get added to my balance. I will put a link to my promo code in the description, so be sure to sign up for your own high-yield savings account to get your $50 sign-up bonus. Okay, let's start by breaking down our first category, debt. Now, debt can obviously come in all kinds of forms. Student loan debt, credit card debt, having a mortgage, a car loan, a business loan. You name it, there's a debt associated with it. Now, I'm not going to decipher between good debt and bad debt because I think that any kind of debt could be argued either way. For example, one person may see student loan debt as a good debt because they are increasing their chances of getting a good paying job in the future, while someone else may see it as a giant hole that's just impossible to climb out of. And personally, I think both of those arguments are completely valid. So instead of trying to decipher what debt is good and what debt is bad, I instead want you to reframe debt as a tool that is helping you build something. Now, this tool might be small and insignificant to one person. Think like a nail in a toolbox full of hundreds of nails, while another person may see it as a hammer in their tool belt, essential for all kinds of different projects. Now, there are also going to be defective tools that can actually slow you down and even disrupt your project. If you're measuring out wood to build a table, but your measuring tape is off, your table might be wobbly or fall down altogether. So how do you determine whether or not a certain debt might be helpful versus destructive? Let's use credit card debt as an example. I think 99.9% of us would agree that credit card debt is bad and it should be avoided at all costs and is never ever a good thing. If Susie decides to go on a shopping spree and buy luxury makeup and the newest Stanley Cup in an exclusive color, all new furniture for her apartment, and she ends up racking up thousands and thousands of dollars of credit card debt that she can't afford to pay off, then yeah, credit card debt is absolutely not a helpful tool for Susie. If she can't use credit responsibly, then cutting up the card and using cash and debit cards are probably going to save her ass in the future. If, however, Susie just graduated from college and is trying to get a corporate job with a good salary and benefits, even if she has $0 to her name, she may need to use credit to go buy a new business suit to use for interviews, to put gas in her car to get to those interviews, to print out resumes, and to generally look the professional part, even though she does not yet have the professional paycheck. Now, in this case, she needs to be mindful about not buying a luxury suit and generally not spending any more money on that card than she absolutely has to. But if she puts her best foot forward and ends up landing a corporate role with the salary to match, and she's able to quickly pay off that credit card debt, was it not a tool that allowed her a better chance at landing that position? Using this mindset, I want you to write out every single debt that you have. Every single one. And then I want you to decide what kind of tool each debt is. I want you to physically write down whether or not it is a helpful tool, what it is helping you achieve, and how long you need that tool before it becomes unhelpful. If you have a home mortgage that has 25 years left and a 4% interest rate, you are able to comfortably pay it off each month and you believe you'll be able to sell that home for a profit in the future, I would consider that mortgage a super tool that will be foundational to your future financial success. On the flip side, if you purchased a home that was out of your price range and you waived the home inspection, you are barely able to keep up with the monthly payments, and now you're having to deal with home repairs on top of it, you might need to consider the fact that this mortgage is actually a defective tool that will cost you time and money and heartache in the future. Once you've written down all of your debts and categorized them as a helpful tool or a defective tool, I want you to give yourself a score between 0 and 5. If all of your debts are helpful tools or you have no debt at all, I would consider that a 4 or a 5. If your debts are mostly defective or you have 1 to 2 astronomically high defective tools, think $30,000 of credit card debt that you have absolutely no way of paying off, then you are going to score yourself a 0 or 1. Now, don't start freaking out if you gave yourself a score of 0 or 1. We have 4 more categories to go through. And I do have an episode called What is the Best Debt Payoff Method? So be sure to check that out. I will link it in the description. Okay, the next category we have is emergency savings. Now, this one is pretty quick and to the point. You either have emergency savings or you don't. I personally like to have 6 months worth of monthly expenses set aside in my emergency savings. So if you generally spend $5,000 a month on your housing, food, utilities, debt obligations, and general living expenses, then you would want to have $30,000 in your emergency savings. 5K a month times 6. Preferably held in a high yield savings account that is earning interest. Like I mentioned earlier, the bank that I use for my emergency savings is Ally Bank, but you can use any kind of online bank or brick and mortar bank that has some kind of a high yields interest rate. Just as an example, Ally Bank has 4.2% right now. So if you held $30,000 with Ally, then you would be earning an extra $1,260 in interest over the course of a year. Now you can either add that interest to your emergency savings to take advantage of compound interest, or take a little vacation, get yourself a little gift, add it to your retirement account. Whatever your little heart desires. Now, if you need help figuring out how much money you should have in your emergency fund, I again have an entire episode on emergency funds that I will also link in the description. Once you have calculated how much you should have saved, we can use this easy little formula to give yourself a score between 0 and 5. How much you already have saved divided by how much you should have saved multiplied by 5. Let's go through an example. First, we'll write out how much we already have saved. Let's say you already have $20,000 saved. You're gonna type in $20,000 to your calculator, and you are then gonna divide that amount by how much you should have saved. So going off of our example, we'll assume that you need $30,000. So $20,000 divided by 30,000 times 5 is 3.3. Of course, while you're younger and just starting out, your score might be on the lower side. But I would argue that as long as you have an income source, you should always have a fully funded emergency fund. So if you have a score of less than 5 in this category, no matter your age, I would strongly encourage you to focus your efforts on socking away money into your emergency savings. Once you have a fully funded emergency fund, then you can start to look at improving other categories. All right, next up, we have my personal favorite category, retirement savings. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is probably my favorite category because it's my highest score, and I used to work with clients and teams to help people save appropriately for retirement. For most people, this also tends to be the highest dollar amount that actually makes up their net worth. So it's exciting to watch your retirement bucket increase over time and see that your hard work is actually paying off. But here's a hard truth. The first 2 decades of your working career are going to be the most critical in terms of laying the foundation for compound growth in your retirement account later in life. And it will be the least rewarding to look at in real time. I'll link my compound growth episode here, but essentially the more time your investments have to grow, the larger that growth will be at the end. A simple idea in theory, but when you are in the thick of it and you're in those beginning foundational years, your 20s and 30s, you are not going to be seeing much growth because there has not been a lot of time for growth to occur. And this can unfortunately turn off a lot of people, especially when you might be thinking about starting a family or buying a first home. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, yes, Kirby, I get it. Saving for retirement is important. But how do I know how much I should be saving? Now, this might come as a shock, but I do, in fact, have an episode that walks you through exactly how much you should be saving for retirement. Again, I will link all of these below. So if you haven't already, go to that episode and calculate how much you need to be saving. Then come back here and give yourself a score between 0 to 5. If you're already adequately saving, that would be a 5, easy peasy. If you have some savings but need to increase that monthly amount, I'd score somewhere between a 2 to a 4, depending on how much you need to increase your savings. And obviously, if you have no retirement savings at all, then you already know that's going to be a 0. Okay, moving on to a lighter category. We have short-term savings and investments. Now, when I say short-term, I mean that you are planning to utilize this money for something specific within the next 1 to 5 years. And to be very clear, this is separate from your emergency savings. Maybe you are saving up to buy a car outright with cash, money for a down payment on a home, a dream vacation, literally whatever the it is, you have a specific purpose for it, and it's not necessarily something that is going to boost your net worth. However, by setting aside money for a specific future use and hopefully earning interest on that money by putting it in a high yield savings account, you are enforcing good money habits and setting yourself up for financial success. Thinking years in advance about how much you want to spend on a specific purchase, actually putting that money aside and working towards that goal, and most importantly, not touching that money for a different purpose is the kind of financial discipline that will separate those who are financially stable from those who are financially unstable. It does not matter the dollar amount you are aiming to save, how long you are saving, or how many goals you are saving towards. If you are currently putting money aside for a specific purpose and you are not using it for anything else, go ahead and give yourself a score of 4 to 5. If you have successfully saved for a short-term goal in the past, but currently don't have anything that you really need to be saving for, and therefore don't have short-term savings aside from your emergency fund, I would give you a score of 3 to 4. And if you are consistently trying to save for short-term goals and you always end up needing to use the money for something else, or have never been able to put any money aside even though you would like to save for short-term goals, go ahead and give yourself either a 0 or 1. I have actually never gone into depth on short-term savings, so if y'all be interested in a deep dive on the topic, let me know, and I would definitely be up to doing a full-length episode. Alrighty, last but not least, we have real assets. Now, the major thing here is obviously going to be real estate, aka your home if you own it. But I wanted to make it a little bit more broad because there are lots of real assets aside from your home that can make a big impact on your overall net worth, such as rental properties, cars, boats, collector items. You get the idea. Again, we want to think of our real assets as tools, a way to help us get to where we want to go. Just having real assets and trying to get more of them is fruitless if you don't actually need them to reach your financial goals. For example, just because you inherit a sailboat from Uncle Jimmy doesn't mean you need to keep it, store it, and repair it over the years. Maybe you just sell it and use the proceeds to invest in something else. Same thing for rental properties. There is no point in accumulating real estate to rent out for passive income if you don't actually have the time and energy to keep up with the properties, collect rent, possibly evict renters who don't pay, and of course, put money into maintenance on these properties. While I do generally think that a lot of people, especially families who have ties to a specific location, benefit greatly from owning the home that they live in, the argument can easily be made for a single person who moves around frequently for work to not own their home. They can instead invest that down payment money, save money on home maintenance, and have the freedom to move whenever their lease is up. It really depends on your lifestyle and current life circumstances as to whether or not having real assets is actually helpful to your overall goals. Keeping that in mind, I want you to list out your real assets, and it is 100% okay if you don't have any. My husband and I only have 3 between the two of us. Our condo, and we each have a car. That's it. Once you have listed everything, I want you to go through each item and list whether or not it is helping you achieve your goals. For us, our condo is helping us build equity and can hopefully be used as a rental property in the future. So I'm gonna list it as helpful. Once you have gone through them all, I want you to list out any real assets that you hope to have in the future. Real assets that will help you achieve your goals. Then, you know the drill. Give yourself a score from 0 to 5. Let's say you have no real assets currently, but you would like to have 2 within the near future. I would probably score that a 1. If you have 5 real assets, but only 1 is helpful, then again, you might want to list your score as a 1. But if you only have 1 real asset and it is helpful and you have no need for additional real assets in the future, then you can list your score as a 5. You get the idea. Okay, so now that we have gone through all 5 categories, we can tally up our scores. The lowest score you can have is obviously a 0, and the highest score is a 25. So here's my super unprofessional opinion-based scoring system. Those under the age of 30 should be aiming for a score of at least 9, focusing on the emergency fund savings. If you are 30 to 39, you should be aiming for a score of at least 12, and I want you to focus on retirement fund savings, managing debt, and adding in a little bit of short-term savings. Those of you who are 40 to 49 should be aiming for a score of at least 15. Continuing to focus on retirement fund savings and also starting to focus on real assets. Once you hit 50 to 59, you should be aiming for a score of at least 18. And by this time, you really shouldn't have a specific focus. Instead, you should be trying to tie all of your categories together in a cohesive way. Think of it as an overall lifestyle approach as opposed to focusing on one specific pot of money. All right, so by the time you are 60, you should really be aiming for a perfect score, and at the very least scoring 4 or more in each category. The last thing you want to do in the last decade before retirement is worry about money. Set yourself up for financial success in the early years. Give yourself a blueprint to work towards and follow so that you can sit back and relax by the time your peers are probably just starting to take a hard look at their finances. All right, I know what you all have been waiting for. My financial score is 11. Yes, you heard that correctly. I just turned 30 and I am not at the minimum score of 12 that I myself recommended for my age group. And guess what? That's okay. Now, I'm not going to go through each category and expose myself like that, but I can tell you that my family is very content with where we are financially speaking. Even though this year has been a really tough one, inflation, job loss, you name it, we've been through it. We have been able to meet each challenge and come out on the other side rather unscathed. Now, would I prefer to have a higher score? Yes, of course. I would be lying if I said no. But I have goals that I want to work towards, and we are actively working towards them every single day. Now, having said that, I literally just turned 30 a few days ago, which means I still have another 9 years to increase that score. I again just want to reiterate the fact that you should not be measuring your success against anybody else. If you have buckled down over the last 8 years after college, put in overtime at work and got second or third jobs and kept to a strict budget to pay down student loan debt, I am 1000% more confident in your financial abilities than I am about Brad down the street, who never had any student loans to begin with, has never worked more than 40 hours in a single week, and yet still managed to rack up $5,000 in credit card debt even though mommy and daddy still pay his phone bill. Having this kind of perspective is really hard, especially when it can be so easy to just look at the number that is in your bank account today and compare it to somebody else's. What I can tell you without a doubt from my experience working in the wealth management industry is that those individuals who buckled down when they were young taught themselves crucial lessons about playing the long game in the stock market, lived at or below their means, saved for retirement starting at an early age, and took the time to learn about their finances, thrived in the long run. They did not have to worry about running out of money or retiring later than they anticipated because they had set themselves up for long-term success. These people included teachers, administrative assistants, and small business owners. While their annual income over their lifetime may have seemed mediocre, they made smart financial decisions time and time again. And over a span of 4 to 5 decades, those decisions compounded on top of each other. I also learned that even if you make $1 million a year, but you live like a king while you're working, spoil your kids to no end, don't save adequately for retirement, and ignore any semblance of a budget, you may be lucky enough to outlive your money, or you might not. Either way, your kids will most likely be left with absolutely nothing and no financial literacy because you taught them zero life skills, and you could very well see yourself homeless and destitute in the last few years of your life. These people held executive positions, owned their own businesses, had multiple properties, and made so much money that they just assumed it would last forever without actually doing the work or research to make sure that it wouldn't run out. Now, I know that seems a little heavy, but I'm just telling you like it is. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. If you gave yourself a financial score, let me know what it is down below, what your best scoring category is, and how you plan on increasing your score in the future. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I will have a brand new episode out on Monday, but till then, have a wonderful week. Later, Rich Girls.